Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 330. I'm your host, Paul Rykoff. And spring is finally here in New York City and across America. The flowers are blooming, the sun is out. But even when it's sunny, and especially this spring, now is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. In springtime, all kinds of seeds that have been laid days ago finally bloom. And that is the case in good ways and in bad ways. In good ways, with our independent movement. And coming up, we are bringing back our Meet the Independent Candidate series for 2025 and kicking it off with the independent candidate for New York City Mayor, Jim Walden. He's a guy you've probably never heard of. You've probably never heard from. There's another guy in the race, Eric Adams, the disgraced mayor, who's a Democrat, who says he's running as an independent, but he's not a real independent. There's right now only one true independent in the race for New York City mayor, and I've got an exclusive conversation with him coming up. But before I get to that, as the weather heats up across America, the politics and chaos is heating up in Washington. And I'm going to take you on a walk around New York City, down Pier 40 on the west side along the Hudson River, and take you through my top topics. Topic number one, as we roll down Pier 40 here on the west side. Resistance is not futile. Resistance is not futile. If you push back, it can make a difference. Sometimes the fight is hard. Sometimes the fight is long. Sometimes you want to give up. But if you don't, you can win. And you can at least make some progress. And where I'm walking right now is actually tragic, but important proof of that. I'm walking along the west side of New York City. Behind me is the Statue of Liberty. And right over there is the spot where a tragic helicopter crash happened just over a week ago, killing a Navy SEAL veteran and a Spanish family of 5, including 3 children. It shocked the city. It was a tragedy that rocked Europe and the world, but it brought attention to an important issue that was long overdue for attention. Dangerous commercial helicopters, unregulated mostly, had been flying all over this city and others in America for far too long. And one of them crashed right over there. All across New York City, our hearts are broken for that family. Tragically, they were lost alongside Navy SEAL veteran Sean Johnson. Now, you may notice that overhead, there are not too many helicopters. There are still a few, but normally the skies overhead would be riddled with helicopters. You'd barely be able to hear me. But in response to that tragedy, helicopters from that company and others have been grounded. Investigations are ongoing, and change has finally happened. Unfortunately, after more lives were lost, but change has finally happened. And local people have been organizing for decades to try to remove this scourge, try to remove the national security threat, try to remove the threat to these passengers, try to remove the threat to the pilots, and also the noise and air pollution that comes from those helicopters. But here's the message. Resistance is not futile. If you fight back, if you push, if you advocate, you can win. And as I also look over my shoulder, we see the site where the Twin Towers once stood. And we're reminded that many people on that day fought back to bring down Flight 93 and to recover from that day. Resistance is not futile, and especially in times of crisis, it's never more important. And this is the third installment of our new episode format, the walk and talk format, where you walk with me around wherever I am to get a glimpse inside of what I'm doing and what's going on. But this is Pier 40. It's a place that's a garage, it's got ball fields, and it's not far from where the crash happened. And I'm going to take you on a walk with me as we run through the most important stories in news and politics. If you don't follow us on YouTube, please go ahead and do that. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on Patreon. Become a Patreon member and chip in a few bucks. Help me keep bringing this kind of independent content in this independent way to the masses for free. Now, anytime I talk national security, or at least until further notice, we're going to have to talk about the ongoing, inexcusable, dangerous chaos that continues around Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Signalgate, and all the other sloppiness and incompetence that has ensued. Now, I warned you, because of their sloppiness and incompetence, it would get worse. There would be more news. We'd find out more about just how badly they're fucking things up. And over the Easter weekend, we found out for sure, because there's new reporting now that revealed that Secretary Pete Hegseth has had another Signal chat where he disclosed classified information, this time with his brother, his wife, and other civilians. He's not even talking to cabinet members on this one. He's talking about flight plans. He's talking about times. He's talking about targets, just like before, violating operational security on a Signal chat. It's unacceptable, and it continues to spiral downward. Now, this all comes soon after Hegseth fired 3 of his top closest advisors, who he brought into the Pentagon himself. He fired them and accused them of leaking. He alleges they leaked classified information. They say it's bullshit. And now they're fighting back. And they're not just fighting back behind the scenes. They're fighting back with op-eds in Politico, and they're fighting back on Tucker Carlson. Recently fired Hegseth advisor Dan Caldwell went on Tucker Carlson to unload on what he sees as the truth, and, of course, to speak directly to Trump. But here's the net. It's chaos, it's tumult, and it's getting worse. Every time you see Hegseth on TV, he looks more and more shook. People across the Pentagon are more and more concerned. Our allies around the world are more and more concerned, and our enemies are celebrating. The question is, will he make it? And my answer is, I don't think so. I think at some point Trump is going to get sick of the distraction and he's going to fire him. He could put somebody in tomorrow who would be a lot more stable, a lot less distracting, and allow him to continue his extreme agenda, not just at the Pentagon, but nationally. Who could it be? It could be somebody like Senator Tom Cotton. It could be somebody like Senator Joni Ernst. Shit, it could be disgraced General Mike Flynn. It could be anybody. And the sad part is they'll all look good after Hegseth. So watch this space and stay vigilant. And in the midst of all this, we learned today that Pete Hegseth, the guy who's supposedly focusing on efficiency, spent a bunch of Pentagon money to create a new makeup room at the Pentagon. Because when you're a TV star, of course, you need a makeup room. And he's spending time and focus on that, but he's not spending time and focus on actually speaking to the press. Last week passed, and it was another week without an open press conference from Hegseth or any spokesperson from the Pentagon. This while the controversy continues to unfold. This while the U.S. continues to strike the Houthis in the Middle East and move aircraft into the Middle East and continue discussions with Ukraine and continue to have a standoff with North Korea and so many other issues. All that is going on. But Pete Hegseth doesn't want to have a press conference. He only wants to speak directly to Fox or directly to X. And there was other news that we didn't have a press conference to discuss. The deadline for the Pentagon to deliver a recommendation on whether or not to invoke the Insurrection Act was on April 20th. That deadline passed. And in a rare stance of good news, we found out that Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Secretary Hegseth did not recommend invoking the Insurrection Act. Well, thank God for small favors. Now, here's the caveat. They didn't recommend invoking it now. That doesn't mean they can't invoke it later. Sidebar, if you didn't hear, disgraceful Homeland Security Director Kristi Noem was at a burger place in Washington, D.C. and had her Versace purse stolen from underneath her chair. Maybe not that big of a deal, except that she had $3,000 in cash in it and could have had her classified cell phone inside. It underscores exactly how sloppy and incompetent these people are. Pete Hegseth is just openly talking on Signalgate. Kristi Noem is just leaving her purse full of potentially vulnerable materials underneath her chair. Kash Patel, the FBI director, is hanging out at UFC events with Dana White and not spending any time at the FBI. Sloppy and incompetent. And that's why, in the midst of all the other chaos, the national security stuff is always most important. Because remember, not only do they have classified information, not only do they have war plans, they have the nukes. Now, last week, I was in beautiful, sunny Coronado, California. one of my favorite places on the planet. And this time of year, late April, if you get really lucky, you can have a really cool experience where the weather is awesome in California. You fly cross country, land on the East Coast, and the weather is also awesome. It's actually a bit warmer here in New York today than it was in Coronado yesterday. So spring is here, folks. Hang in there. The sun will come out. It will get warmer. Sometimes we just gotta hang on. So as we continue to walk, we're now near the Department of Marine and Aviation at the end of Pier 40, which is something most folks have never seen if you come visit New York. It's something below the radar. It's not the only thing that's happening below the radar this week. So check it out. Here it is, my issues that are below the radar. The first one is Ukraine. Unfortunately, so many things Ukraine are now below the radar. In the midst of the market chaos and the chaos at the Pentagon, the war in Ukraine continues. And we passed through Easter weekend without a peace deal, without Putin acknowledging a ceasefire. He continued to bomb, he continued to kill civilians across Ukraine, even throughout the Easter weekend. And the rhetoric from the White House continued to be disgraceful and un-American. As now Marco Rubio says, if we don't have a peace deal soon, they might just give up. They might just give up on diplomacy and just send everybody away. Well, that would be ridiculous. That would be quitting. That would be unacceptable. And that would be traitorous and definitely helpful to Russia. Because if there's no peace deal and things continue as they're going, that means Russia continues to kill Ukrainian civilians. So as the peace deal continues to evade everyone, and as Trump and his team continue to spout the most despicable rhetoric that victim shames Ukraine and treats Russia like a good actor, watch this space. Keep following Ukraine. Check out American Veterans for Ukraine for more. Check out my last episode with chess master and great political activist Garry Kasparov. And, of course, stay vigilant. You know, most of my below the radar topics end up being bad news or concerning news. Here's a piece of good news that was below your radar, one that will inspire you this spring. Did you know there's something called the Best Ranger competition? It is a grueling 3-day competition that happens at Fort Benning in Georgia. I've been there before, I've witnessed it, and it's kind of like the military Olympics for badasses. And this weekend, history was made as Lieutenant Shannon White, a female ranger, became the first ever woman to not only compete, but to finish the Best Ranger competition. 52 teams competed, only 16 finished. And Lieutenant Shannon White and her partner were one of those teams. So hats off to Shannon White for breaking barriers, for making history, and for being a badass, even if it's below the radar. One more topic before we get to my fantastic conversation with independent candidate for New York City Mayor Jim Walden. We know that as the political infighting and chaos continues across Washington, one thing is for sure. Republicans have gone off a cliff, and Democrats will not save you. If you ever needed another example of why the Democrats were completely discombobulated, leaderless, without a strategy, and eating their own, check out this new ongoing battle between James Carville and upstart Democrat activist David Hogue.
The well-known Democratic strategist James Carville said in response to this announcement of this plan that you have to primary Democrats, he said that the DNC should sue you and called you, quote, a contemptible little twerp. What is your reaction to that?
Try it. That is my reaction. I would also say James Carville has not won an election since before I was born. I think it's time to have new leaders in our party that are ready to meet this moment, because a lot of the people that are most critical of this plan are the same ones that had $2 billion to win an election and still lost. So I think the experts can save it, because it's time for some new ideas.
So Democrats are again doing what they do best, eating their own. Here it is, another reason for normal Americans, non-political experts, non-political consultants, to declare your independence and leave the Democratic Party. If you're a Republican and you haven't left the party already, now is your time. And if you're a Democrat and you need another reason to declare your independence and become unaffiliated, this mess, this ongoing division, how the Democrats continue to eat their own as our country faces so much turmoil, is yet another reason to declare your independence. The Republicans will not come to their senses, maybe with the exception of recent guest Republican Don Bacon. The Democrats will not save you. And independence probably won't save you either, but we're bringing hope. We're bringing moderation. We're bringing effectiveness. We're bringing youth and vigor and patriotism and all the things that our country is lacking right now. So I am very proud in this moment to bring back our groundbreaking Meet the Independent Candidate series for 2025. Last year, I talked to candidates from Senate to local school board from all across the country. Independent candidates that were high profile that you may have heard of, like Dan Osborne, who ran in Nebraska, and others that you maybe hadn't heard of, like Jason Taylor or Shalane Etchinson. We brought you new voices and voices who had won, like Yemi Mobilati, the inspiring independent mayor from Colorado Springs. And now, in 2025, we are bringing it back, and we are bringing it back strong. This is New York City. The mayor of New York City has been called the second hardest job in America. And whether you live here or not, what happens here impacts you and impacts the world. Over my shoulder are tourist boats and loud tourist boats. Millions of people come from all over the world to visit New York City to get a piece of America, to experience our culture, to get some pizza and maybe check out the Yankees. But this year is an off-cycle election. And maybe the most important election in America will be the election for mayor in the city of New York. There's ranked choice voting. There's a mayor who was indicted. There's a former disgraced governor who had to resign in scandal. And there is an independent candidate that's getting almost no press attention. And we're going to change that today. I had to get away from some of the noise, and it's New York City, so now I'm around more noise, which is an issue for the mayor and for any other public official in the city, among others. But Jim Walden is a serious guy. He worked as a prosecutor and put mobsters and drug dealers in jail. He's worked as a lawyer, and he's got some refreshing ideas about how to change the city. And he's up against the whole thing. He's up against like 8 Democratic candidates. He's up against a Republican candidate, and he's up against the system. He's put $500,000 of his own money up, but he's also now qualified for almost $2 million in matching funds. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about crime. We're going to talk about how expensive this city is. And yes, we're going to find out what his favorite slice of pizza is in New York. It's a really important conversation you won't see anywhere else. And the first in our 2025 Meet the Candidate series. The April showers might be gone. And the May flowers are actually here early. Not just in your garden or in your park, but maybe also in politics. So welcome to the latest installment of our Meet the Independent Candidate series. Welcome to a conversation with a man who's running to be elected independent mayor of New York City. Welcome to Independent Americans, episode 330. Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country, around the world, and especially in New York City. In the midst of all the chaos happening in Washington, there's an election this year, not in 2026, but this year. And I think the most high profile among them is going to be the one here in New York City. It's not just about New York City, it's about America, and it's about the world. And you may not know it, but there is at least one, potentially 2 independent candidates running for mayor. And I'm happy that one of them is joining us in this episode. The great and powerful Jim Walden is here on Independent Americans. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here, and thanks for your service.
Well, thank you for your service. And I want to get into that. I want to get into a lot of things New York, but it's long been said that mayor is the second toughest job in America, mayor of New York City, and it's going to touch everyone in every way. I even want to talk about the Knicks and the Yankees and the Mets because I can't get by with that. I wore my Knicks shirt because after last night's game, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to wear it, but I'm hoping that they're going to come back.
Forever
and
Knicks.
and that you'll be making an impact. So let me ask you this, Jim. I ask everybody this. Where are you? How are you? And maybe for the folks who have never heard of you, who are you?
Okay. Well, I'm Jim Walden. I'm in New York City. I've been in New York City since 1993. I cut my teeth as a federal prosecutor, primarily going after organized crime, the mob, as well as Chinese heroin traffickers from the Golden Triangle, mostly the money guys. I did that for 9 years, mostly with mob prosecutions, and then I became a private lawyer. And for the last 23 years, I've been doing things to pay the bills, but I've also been giving back to disadvantaged groups and individuals who have been screwed over by the government. So regardless of whether it's the indigent, the mentally ill, public school kids, low-income housing tenants, I've brought tons of cases to try to substantiate their rights, push back against either corrupt or inept decisions from policymakers. And it is what has caused me to decide at this point to run for mayor. I've seen good administrations, I've seen near great administrations, and I've seen terrible administrations. And from my perspective, we need a break from the political parties to have a period of time where excellence is the standard. People are first, not politics. And we have an independent city hall that is channeling both Democratic values, Republican values, and everything in between to get a centrist platform that will deliver the services that people need, that people rely on, and that people deserve.
Well, you're singing a song that this audience is receptive to, and I want to get into the nitty gritty of it. And I have been, among the many vocal critics of Mayor Adams and his predecessor. I've called Adams Mayor Disaster 2.0 because de Blasio was 1.0. We've seen what can happen at its worst in terms of partisanship, in terms of incompetence, in terms of failures of moral leadership. But let me ask you this before we get into all of that. I mentioned Adams because he's now running as an independent because the Democrats won't have him. And too often, independents become self-proclaimed independents because they have nowhere else to go. But let me ask you to set the stage for yourself, because it sounds like you're the only true independent in this race. Why are you an independent? And how do you define independent, especially in this environment?
So that's a great question, and I'm thrilled to answer it because it was a decision I made a long time ago. So in the aftermath of the Clinton administration and in the beginning of the Bush administration, I was becoming more and more politically aware and dialed in, and I saw what was happening between the parties, and it just made me sick that there was so much infighting, so much disagreement. Blood sport was starting to emerge. It's only gotten worse. So in 2006, I realized that the party system was broken and that all too often people were putting party over policy, party over people, and I was not down with that. So I registered as what's called in New York an unaffiliated voter. At that time, there was an independence party, but I wasn't that familiar with it. So I registered as unaffiliated. Subsequently, the Democrats banned the Independence Party in New York State, which I thought was a horrible abuse of power, and nobody even really realized that they had done that. There were 500,000 registered members of the Independence Party in New York State at the time, or at one time before they banned it. So this was clearly a naked attempt to try to suppress voter freedom. And this is what the Democrat and frankly the Republican Party have been doing for years with things like gerrymandering. So in 2006, I had enough. I decided I wanted to be an independent. And since that time, I've chosen candidates based on their qualities and qualifications, not their party affiliation.
So New York City is an interesting place for all of this, right? I mean, it's one of the most hostile to unaffiliateds in the entire country. I'm living proof of that. I'm a 9/11 first responder, a veteran, baseball coach. I'm an active citizen here, and I can't vote in the most meaningful elections that determine who's going to be our mayor because our primaries are closed. you mentioned the Independence Party, which is kind of a part of the clutter that exists in America, right? It's different in each city. It's different in each state. Sometimes people are registering and they want to register unaffiliated, but they end up registering with an independence type party. A really central issue of this show, and I think of this movement, is open primaries. As a mayor, as a candidate for mayor, will you support open primaries? And what we've called, the overt disenfranchisement of millions of New Yorkers, where our public funds are paying for private elections in our public schools, like right across the street. They have an election in my kid's public school, and I can't vote in it. Have you already come out on the record and say you support or oppose open primaries?
Yeah, so I want to look at the data to see what it does to voter turnout. It's a super fascinating idea. It's completely consistent with my values. But honestly, I'm because I'm not a career politician or a politician at all. This is the first time I've ever run for office. I don't give politically convenient answers. And the truth of the matter is, I need to study it more before I get fully behind it. But I'm certainly behind the idea of it, because what we need in this country to get past the terrible point that we're at is we need solutions outside of the two-party system. We just do. There's just too much entrenchment, not enough term limits, too much money in politics, and the vote of the little guy and gal has been completely lost. And we need to get that back, and we need to really challenge the two parties to hold them accountable for bad candidates and bad policy.
I think this is part of why we do this show, to get folks on the spot about issues like open primaries. So I hope you'll make a public statement on that either way sometime soon. I think it's kind of in my view, it's part of a litmus test if you're really independent, right? Because you can't really claim independence if you don't support the basic right of equality for independents to vote in the city. And it's been pretty hostile, but we do have some advantages over other places. We've got ranked choice voting. We've got matching funds. You've put, I think, $500,000 of your own money into this race. And I think I read recently you got $1.9 million in matching funds. Can you walk us through both the tactical execution, what is required for that to happen? Especially most folks, even in New York City, don't understand it. How do you get $1.9 million in matching funds? And why did you take that strategy?
Yeah. So as a practical matter, although I'm well off, I didn't have nearly enough money, certainly liquid money, especially to finance the campaign myself. And frankly, I understand the importance of matching funds in the environment we're in. I wish we did matching funds in a totally different way. But the way that it works now is you have to reach a threshold of what I'll call credibility. Now, the credibility really is a gating item that the majority parties put in to keep out independent candidates. So they should lower the thresholds that are necessary for both first-time candidates and independent candidates or third-party candidates. But the thresholds are the same whether you're an incumbent politician that's been in office for 20 years and has an established base, or you're someone like me that's never run before and doesn't have any established base to speak of. And you have to raise 1,000 contributions that total at least $250,000. And once you reach that threshold, then you qualify for matching funds. It's arduous. It requires a lot of time that probably would be better spent actually canvassing and meeting voters, or getting policies out, or attending mayoral forums. But it took a lot of time. We got the job done. We did it in only 2 cycles. That is extremely rare, even for established politicians. And that is a measure of the wide support that we got early because of our message of change and hope.
And talk to folks, please, if you can, Jim, about how the actual vote's going to work, right? There's going to be a Democratic primary this summer. There's going to be a Republican primary. Right now, it looks like it's probably going to be Curtis Sliwa, right? Unless someone else jumps in, unless I'm mistaking that one, right?
Nope.
But you have the shit show of the Democrats, where you've got, I don't know, what are we at, like 10 candidates now on the Democratic side. Cuomo's leading there, but then they're going to duke it out, and you're going to have a Republican nominee, and talk about what happens afterward practically.
Yeah, it's another great question. There's 4 ballot access spots, right? So if you printed up a ballot right now, there would be 4 lines at the top, and it would be Democrat, Republican, Working Families, and the Conservative Party. So if each of those field a separate candidate, and that's not clear yet, there'll be at least 4, and then as of now, there's 2 independents, me and the current mayor, Eric Adams. So it could be a 6-way race. Now, it's not clear whether the Conservative Party is going to field a candidate. It's not clear whether the Working Families Party is going to give their line to the winner of the Democratic primary or someone else. That will depend probably on whether or not Zoran Mamdani, who is the socialist candidate, the Democratic socialist, if he wins the Democratic primary, he will probably take both lines, the Democrat and the Working Families Party. If Cuomo wins the Democratic primary, they will probably give the ballot, the Working Families Party will probably give it to Zoran Mamdani. So either way, there's going to be between 4 and 6 candidates. So it's going to be a very active field. Curtis Sliwa, you were correct, is going to be the Republican. I have not heard that there's another Republican that has qualified with the number of signatures that they need for the ballot.
So the likelihood is going to be Cuomo, who seems to be leading in most polls, right, by a significant percentage. Sliwa, unless, I don't know, Mike Bloomberg jumps back in and calls himself a Republican, or Castamatidis or someone else jumps in. You'll probably have Mamdani run on the Working Families Party, right? And then you or Adams? Is it one or the other? Or is there a scenario where both of you will be there?
No, but well, assuming that we both get enough petition signatures, and again, the signature requirements for an independent are the exact same as they are for a majority party. So you have to get 3,750 qualified voters to sign your petition. As a practical matter, that means that you need to get 2 or 3 times that amount to make sure that you can withstand a ballot challenge in case people sign your petition that either aren't voters or they signed someone else's petition. So in every way, the deck is stacked here in New York against the independents because our petitioning period is after the Democrats and the Republicans. So there's a higher likelihood that someone's going to sign our petition that already signed somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And not everyone's honest or even remembers sometimes whether they signed another petition. But in any event, assuming everyone gets enough signatures on the petition, there will be 6 people. There will be at least 2 independents, me and Adams. It's still possible that somebody else might be petitioning, and we may not know about that until later in May. So it's going to be a frothy general election. Mm-hmm. And if Cuomo does come through ranked choice voting, which, by the way, my money's on Mamdani to win the Democratic primary, not Cuomo. But if he does come through, there'll be 6 candidates. One of them will be named Cuomo, and that will be a battle because the question is, those poll numbers that he got, do they really reflect what people do when they're in the voting booth after they've heard again and again and again all of the negatives? And it seems like every day there's a new negative that comes out about Andrew Cuomo.
I want to get into the policy stuff, and I want to get into some of your opponents, but I want to stay in this nerdy stuff because this is, there's the old saying.
I love the nerdy stuff.
There's this old saying in the military that strategy is for amateurs and logistics is for experts. Like, this is why it's so hard for independents to run, right? And let me just ask you straight up, Jim, if you didn't have $500,000 of your own money, could you even do this much? I mean, would you be dead in the water, right?
Well,
unless you were a celebrity or someone else, right?
It would make it very daunting. It really would, because not being able to pay the bills from day one is tough. And I'll tell you that the election workers, they're mostly Democrats. They mostly won't work for an independent here. I had to go far and wide to try to get a team that would even agree to work with me. Some would only work with me under the condition that they stayed under the radar. So again, at every single level, the system is structured to suppress third parties and independents, and to solidify the position of the 4 ballot access parties. And even those parties, like the Working Families Party, Andrew Cuomo went after them viciously when he was governor and tried to kill them. So even in Albany, they do everything that they can to suppress third parties. And that's something that really has to change.
Well, and there's always a chance that Cuomo could lose and then run as an independent. right, and pull the Adams card here, right, which would create an entirely different scenario. But I think also underscores the challenge we have as independents. We're often viewed as the place people go when they don't have anywhere else to go, or it's the place for weirdos and wackos, right? And it, especially in the last cycle with folks like Dan Osborne, we've been trying to show the seriousness of the movement, right? People who come from the national security world, who come from the legal world, who come from the business world. We've got Bloomberg as an example here, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think he won as a Democrat and then changed afterward.
Close, close. In 3 races, he ran as Republican independent, and then independent Republican.
Right.
So he had 2 lines in each of the races, but he was a Republican in the first 2 terms and then switched to independent in the third.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I got it backwards because
That's okay.
It's been hard to track on these folks here, right? And so let me ask you to go straight into this. I mean, why are you the real independent? Or are you, do you think, I'm assuming you think you are, but why? I have my own opinions, and I've been vocal about the fact that Eric Adams is doing this for political convenience, like almost everything else he's doing. He's not really, he's even said he's still a Democrat. But for, you know, the roughly 50% of folks that in the city, maybe, that are independents, especially young people who are voting for the first time and disproportionately unaffiliated, how can they trust you? Right? I mean, that's part of the question here is you can't really trust people to be really independent. Why can they trust you to be really independent?
Well, so they can trust me to be independent because I've been independent for virtually my whole voting life. I mean, I was a Democrat, little d, until 2006. Even then, I supported some Republican candidates when I didn't like the Democratic candidates. And since 2006, I mean, that's a long time ago. It's almost 20 years now. I've been an independent, and my whole way of doing this election is different. I've already pledged that in my administration, there's going to be Democrats and Republicans and independents and a conservative party member as part of my core team. And my policies are centrist. I mean, there are policies that if people looked at them in isolation would appear to be more, I hate using the word progressive, I'll say liberal, more liberal policies when it comes to reinforcement of the safety net, or more conservative policies when it has to do with policing, for example, or fiscal responsibility. So I've often described myself as an independent or a unicorn because it is rare, particularly in local politics, for someone to declare centrism as a defining goal. And the truth of the matter is, when I've gone to areas, whether I'm on the Upper West Side or I'm in Brownsville and Brooklyn, one of the hardest hit areas, highest crime areas, so many people that I meet describe themselves exactly the way I describe myself, which is they really don't care what the party says. They're disgusted with career politicians who, you know, think that they deserve the job and they want to enjoy the job, but they don't want to do the job. And we've seen that again and again at every single level, at federal, state, local. And I think people are just done because when you have bad candidates, you have bad policy, and then you have bad outcomes. And that's what we've been seeing.
You know, Adams ran sort of as a moderate Democrat, right? A strong on crime, former cop, and now it's just evolved into this epic and catastrophic shit show. But what's the strategy, Jim? I mean, assuming that it's fair, we've got our friend Errol Lewis and others, Brian Lair, who will be kind of, you know, moderating these forums, and it'll get to a crescendo after the summer. I assume you'll get spaces on most of the debate stages if there are debates and forums. You've been involved in those. But what's the strategy here? I mean, you need a home run. You know, I don't know, the independent expenditures. You know, you're going to seek out endorsements. But how do you win this? I mean, how do you make the case to someone to give you money when it looks like you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of actually pulling this off?
Right. Well, listen, I mean, you're patient and you have a plan, right? So, and I believe in planning and logistics, and it's important to land both planes. And so far, you know, every single milestone that we've set, we've exceeded. I raised $630,000 in my first cycle, 2 months, which was the second highest, and the top guy was only about $13,000 ahead of me. And in the second cycle, I made matching. I got my first significant endorsement, which is the largest labor organization in the city, within 2 weeks of my launch. And in the first poll, despite the fact that I have a name recognition hill to climb, I broke through in the first poll, which tells you that my strategies so far are working. Now, I didn't punch through hard. I was at 4%, but nobody gave me a snowball's chance in hell, to use your phrase, of doing all of these things. And the more that I do, the more attention that I'm getting, and the more attention that I get. And believe me, I fight for every bit of ink that I can get. It's helping in the overall strategy. But the thing that's helping the most is the fact that I can go into any community. I was over the weekend, I went to the Pink Houses, which is a low-income housing community, what we call a NYCHA community, that has been very, very hard hit, and it's in a very high crime area in East New York. And I went there and I spoke to people for the majority of the day. I can go into an area like that and walk away with people that are inspired. I can walk into Wall Street boardrooms and walk away with people that are inspired. Because of my life's journey, I appeal to people where they stand, which are on the key issues. People don't care about when they're talking about a city government that delivers safe and clean transportation, or gets rid of corruption, or makes literacy a priority. They don't care about all of these other hot button issues. They want state and federal officials to duke those things out. They want a city government that's going to deliver what people need to prosper, to be able to pay their bills, to have safe housing. And when I talk about those things, and they know that it's authentic because I struggled in some of those areas over the course of my life, that's why I am different, and why I believe I'm catching on, even more so than the number of articles that have been written about me or my policies.
Jim, you are the first in our Meet the Independent Candidate series for this year, and we obviously want to try to give you as much shine as we can, so you can make these points and you can connect with people. And also, I think, New York has become such a microcosm for the nation on a couple of issues. And let me ask you to just tackle the one that I think is maybe most relevant to me and so many other people, not just in New York, but nationally. We can't call it crime. Safety, right, is the issue, I would say, right? Safety, because there's this bullshit about crime rates and all that. I've lived in New York most of my adult life. It's never felt less safe. Walking with my kids on public transportation around our neighborhoods in most of the city, it feels notably less safe. And I think many Americans feel that way in their cities around the country for any number of reasons, including because they're afraid of the police, or because of ICE, or most, I think immediately in New York City, just the proliferation of people who are out in the street who feel like threats, right? And you can't quantify a crazy person on the subway who threatens you, right? It's not going to go in the police blotter. We've all seen that happen. But let me ask you, what is your plan to make New York City safer?
Yeah. So thanks. Great question. And let me just tell you something. It's like, you only have to see one time for the rest of your life the video of Debrina Kwam getting immolated on the subway by a Venezuelan migrant to have that resonate every single time you or your kids or your loved one step on the subway. And that was a terrible crescendo moment in a long series of assaults, stabbings on the subway. So the truth of the matter is that there are two things on safety that we have to get right. And the number one thing is the number of police officers we have. We were at 40,000, in the Bloomberg administration. We're now down to about 34,000 by the end of the year. Some estimates have us as low as 30,000. That's 25% below what we need at a time where we're still, regardless of whether or not there's been a drop this quarter, we are way above the crime rate that we were before COVID. And so that's the benchmark that people should be working toward. And you can't do that without getting more police officers on the street. That's number one.
Can I pause you on that one?
Sure.
Because I want to dig deeper on this, because I think it's not just about, as
I'm just going to take a
tell you
drink.
this as a former military police officer, as a guy who does security, it's not just about quantity, it's about quality.
I agree.
And former cops, because we need better cops, right? We need better people. We need better training. We need better support. We need to make being a cop more attractive to talented people right now, right? And after especially the last two administrations, cops don't want to stay in. They want to get out. Young people don't want to be cops. What can you do about the actual quality? Is it pay increases? Is it incentives? How are you going to get better cops in New York and not just more of them?
Yeah, so that's a super complicated question. So I'll tell you a couple of what I think are requirements. Number one, we have to have stability at the top. And right now, we don't have stability at the top. We have a bunch of cronies of Eric Adams other than Jessica Tisch. Jessica Tisch is the one breath of fresh air. Even she's challenged based on the circumstances that she inherited. She's the fourth police commissioner in 3 years. It's ridiculous. So first of all, we need to clean house. I'm not talking about Tisch, but at the lower ranks, we need to clean house and get the Eric Adams cronies out of there. Secondly, we have to have better starting salaries for our police officers and more reasonable benefits. The idea that we don't have a mortgage program for our cops to attract the best and the brightest here is a self-inflicted wound. We should be able to do that. We're the greatest city in the world. We should be able to help cops who are putting their lives on the line every day get a roof over their heads so that they're not suffering home insecurity while they're trying to patrol. And number three, we have to change the way that we train police officers. We got to extend the academy and include some empathy training in there so that before they have a badge and guns, rookie cops are going into the field, working with community leaders in disadvantaged circumstances, going to events like Cops and Kids and PAL, and really seeing how retired cops and older cops relate to members of the community. And that's got to be baked into the training and many other things. But if we do those three things alone, we will have a better, more responsive, more responsible police force. But the fourth thing is, we've gone through a long time where even though New York City has the best police department in the country, even though they have one of the lowest complaint rates, they've been vilified for problems that have been national problems. And, piling on to that discussion with things like defund the police are some of the things that a lot of the Democrats have been doing for the last many years. One of them introduced a bill to strip cops of qualified immunity. A number of others have called for defunding the police in reaction to the Black Lives Matter movement. When I hear those words, I just think of it as police bigotry, because the truth of the matter is, there are cops across the city who are involved in acts of valor every day. And what we need is balance. We should lift up our disadvantaged communities and give them what they need to trust the police again. And there are proven strategies for doing that. But we also need to support our police. And in City Hall, the police are going to have someone that supports them and wants them to get better the way we all need to get better. I need to get better. You need to get better. The cops need to get better too. And they want that.
Jim, I mean, the Democrats have a record low approval rating on the party, and I think that must be so much lower in New York City among cops and firefighters, and in places obviously like Staten Island. So I think you have a real opportunity to snatch some of that market share from the Democrats and from what normally would go to a reasonable Republican. Curtis Lee was not a serious candidate. He runs every year. He's, for the folks that don't know, he's a radio show host and a perennial candidate. So I think there's an opportunity for you to make headway on that as an independent, especially, but also on maybe the other top issue, which is cost. Right? Everything's expensive. There's no place more expensive than New York City. Everybody feels the pressure. Cops can't afford to live here. Everybody's feeling a crunch. And now we're also seeing the downstream impacts of things like tourism's down. So how are you going to make New York City more affordable, more livable for people in the city?
Right. So there's a couple of components to that. And number one is we need to be more fiscally responsible. I mean, if you look at the state comptroller's reports, we've got some dark days ahead of us if we don't turn the ship around on cutting programs that don't really help that many people. But at the same time, a rising tide lifts all boats, and we've got to lean into our business and real estate communities if we want to solve some of these perennial problems. There are too many New York businesses or real estate companies that aren't doing business here or are leaving. And we've got to realize that the trajectory that we're on is not one that is consistent with both prosperity and having a safety net that New Yorkers deserve. So I don't believe in these false choices. I believe in balance. That's why I'm a centrist. So on affordability, for example, I put out a housing plan that is the most detailed housing plan of any candidate in the race, because I, with my team, took the time to really figure out all the tools that we had, not to just help produce housing, but to produce enough sustainably so that we will get beyond the housing crisis. And frankly, we were very ambitious in terms of what we intended to do, which is largely based on land management. It's largely taking or taking back parcels of property that are either vacant, underused, they've never been developed on. There's a lot of land in New York City where there could be vibrant housing. And we're going to trade that to developers for fewer tax incentives to preserve as much of our tax base as possible, while at the same time creating a whole new contract-based system of rent stabilization where the rents are going to be actually lower, because we're going to use a rent that's based on borough-specific income, and we're going to cap it at 25% instead of 30%. So there's a lot of.
Can I pause you and take you back to where you started? Because that
Sure.
You're covering a lot of bases here.
Oh, sorry.
But no, it's helpful. But what are you going to cut and who are you going to tax? You said earlier, there's some programs that need to be cut. What specifically are you going to cut, and where are you going to generate revenue? Like, who are you going to tax? How are you going to balance it? Because we got to get down to brass tacks on that. And for the folks who aren't going to sift through the 100-page housing document, which I admire, the ambition of it, what are you going to cut and who are you going to tax?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example, right? We need to get more money, for example, to our schools, right? Our literacy rates in the fourth grade are only 50%. We're the greatest city in the world, and we can't get literacy right for school kids. What's the problem there? The problem is that 40 cents of every dollar that goes to the Department of Education goes to administrative costs that have nothing to do with running schools. So we've got to get that number down. And there's some programs that I'm still studying. So I'm not going to say I'm going to cut a program and when I need more data in order to identify something that's really not working. But there are programs that the Department of Education has been wedded to that don't seem like they're working to me. And so I'm going to take a hard look at them with subject matter experts in every single agency. So every single agency, by dint not of my policy priorities, but by where we are on the budget, right? Our capital position right now is worse than it was last year and the year before. So we're going to need to go through with a sharp pen and a scalpel and trim a lot of the fat. I'll give you another example, right? Our overtime for police has ballooned in a ridiculous way, where we're overworking police officers, and we spent more than $1 billion on overtime that I believe was unbudgeted. If we took 56% of that, we could hire 9,000 new police officers at higher salaries, which means that we would need even less overtime than what remains of the $1 billion.
But Jim, you'd also lose a lot of cops who need the overtime. Right? Like, this is the side of that people don't talk about. A lot of cops can live as cops because they do overtime, right? And that's how, especially senior cops are gonna, keep being cops and not retire. So isn't there a challenge there in reducing overtime and losing the upside that presents for people who are cops?
Listen, you may be talking to different people than I am, but I know a lot of cops that are burned out and at their wits' end, and they're doing overtime tours that they don't want to do. And frankly, to the extent that there's an incentive to do overtime, it's kind of at the later stages of your career, as opposed to kind of when you're in the heart of your career. So I don't think that reducing kind of what I will call forced overtime is going to have a negative impact on morale. But that's why I'm going to choose a great police commissioner. I mean, what I believe is that if you have more cops and they're better trained and they're more empathetic to disadvantaged communities, it's a win-win-win for everyone. And if it turns out that there's some attrition fallout as a result of that, you're probably then getting rid of officers that aren't doing it for the right reasons in any event. So I would say the other thing that I would do is, given the fact that we have a crisis now, there's a lot of police officers in uniform that are doing administrative jobs in NYPD that civilians can do, and there are older cops that still want to work, right? They still believe in the job. They still want to give to the city. And I would release both of those things. I would get cops back out on the street and have administrative people doing administrative work. And I would lift the forced retirement age to make sure that if there were quality cops that could still endure the rigors of the job, that we increased so that maybe we didn't have to hire 9,000, maybe we only hire 7,000.
Jim, I know I've taken you already over time. Do you have a couple more minutes?
Oh, sure, sure.
So, I mean, we could turn this into a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast. So I hope you'll come back. But let me ask you maybe one of the most important questions related to all of this. Adams has bent the knee and kissed the ring and compromised himself in ways that we've rarely ever seen a public official do to avoid his indictment and to now, it appears, appease Trump. He seems to be complicit in the Trump agenda at this point and compromised. How would you describe your intended position with regard to Trump?
Right.
Jim Walden's mayor of New York, what does that mean in with regard to how you will deal with Trump, who is
Right.
probably going to be, the biggest wave stirrer on everything from congestion pricing to potentially helicopters and cops and everything else. He's going to have his finger in everything. What's going to be your stance toward Trump?
Yeah. So first of all, you should be aware, I have a history with Trump that's not positive. So I sued his campaign when they went after the head of the cybersecurity agency, who they fired for simply saying that the 2020 election was the safest in U.S. history. So I sued the Trump campaign and some of their cronies for disparaging, slandering, and putting Chris Krebs in a situation where his family was unsafe. So for that and several other reasons, I'm not the president's, his favorite guy. But at the same time, every candidate in the race so far has one of two speeds. Speed number one is I bend the knee to Trump and I basically do whatever he says. That's Eric Adams. Speed number two is I'm going to fight. At every point I'm going to fight. I've got multiple speeds, right? I'm a nuanced person, and I believe that, we should respect the office of the president, even if our choice did not end up there. And Washington has development dollars that we need. There's support that we get from Washington that we need to continue to get. But at the same time, we have to enforce New York values. So if there's ever a time for a smart, aggressive litigator to be in City Hall, now is the time, because I'm going to fight where I need to fight to protect New York values. So if the Trump administration says that people are no longer allowed to take DEI into consideration in their own private hiring decisions, that is beyond the limits of federal constitutional power, and I'm going to fight that. I know where the limits are of federal, state constitutional power, and frankly, Albany has overreached at various times and foisted bad laws on New York City too. So I'm going to come out with a policy later this week that's intended to put this in writing to show how it's possible to use what's called home rule power, which is what the state constitution gives to cities like New York, more aggressively and assertively, so that we can take a close look at Project 2025 and not just be reactive to what is done to us, but to get ahead of problems to make sure that we are doing battle to protect New Yorkers before Washington, or Albany for that matter, visits moralizing through either executive orders or legislation that is beyond their constitutional powers.
Jim, I saw you did 2 years Navy ROTC, right? When you were at, was that when you were at Hamilton?
No, this was like baby. I took it off the website because frankly, I got a couple of veterans that were offended that I had included it. There was a reason I included it, but it doesn't matter. But yes, I was in ROTC, but obviously that's not real military. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to burnish my credentials.
Okay, but it was so ROTC is real military, right? Like, so yeah, but you were not ROTC, or you were ROTC?
Yeah, no, no. I was on an aircraft carrier for 2 weeks.
Okay.
I trained up. I trained up with uniformed soldiers, people, active duty soldiers. We did a lot of great community service. There was a lot of good that we did in our community, so I was super proud of it. That's why I put it on. My dad was a veteran. My grandfather was a veteran. So I didn't go in service the way you did. So thank you again for your service. But veterans are important to me.
I bring it up for a number of reasons. And again, I'll have to have you come on again. And I want to go deeper on things like the migrant crisis and education, others. But there's a timely issue that I think is related to our national security that just happened a week and a half ago. We had another civilian aircraft crash, right? A family from Spain was killed. A Navy SEAL was piloting it. I live in Lower Manhattan, and I see this as a quality of life issue. It's obviously a pollution issue, but also a national security issue. There's nothing stopping one of those choppers from slamming into the Brooklyn Bridge or into the 9/11 memorial or into any other number of soft targets. Most public officials at the national level have been quiet on this issue until now. Schumer's finally come forward. Adams has been totally derelict, like in so many other areas. Will you ban or regulate these civilian helicopters in some way? Will you commit to that? And what's going to be your approach? Because this seems to be a disaster waiting to happen that we also saw in Washington, D.C. and so many other places. But if I look out my window right now, there's a swarm of them. And it seems to be a real issue that's not getting enough attention. What would you do about it?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and the truth of the matter is, I'd be inclined to just get rid of them altogether, as opposed to just regulate them. The city's tried to regulate them; it says it's regulating them, and the crash rates are very, very low. So I don't want to over dramatize it, but it's just one of those things that is too risky in this environment. And it's not as though they're a tremendous drive of revenue for the city, and there's not other ways to experience New York City at heights, given the number of attractions people can go to, like old ones like the Empire State Buildings and new ones like the Edge over by Hudson Yards. So I'm very skeptical. I'm not going to come out and say I'm going to ban them. I'm just telling you where I'm leaning right now. I've looked at the crash data, and as much as that was an awful tragedy, I don't know that that's the reason to do it. But to me, the security reason and having essentially no screening, no diligence over people flying over New York City in this day and age never sat well with me. So that's my perspective.
Great. I hope you will ban them at least in Lower Manhattan and send them up higher so they're not buzzing the schools and our parks. And really, if we tried to have this conversation outside, we wouldn't be able to, because it would be so noisy. And it feels like one of those issues that can impact quality of life, national security, and people are just afraid to take a stance on. So I hope you will do that. Let me ask you a couple of easy questions to end this. Yankees or Mets?
Sorry, bud. Phillies. So I love the Yankees and the Mets.
This is the worst. Like, can't we get a fucking mayor who's a real Yankee fan or a Mets fan?
I'm an honest guy, dude.
I mean, De Blasio was a Red Sox fan. You're a Phillies fan?
Okay, but listen to me, my friend. Like, my formative experiences were with Pete Rose, so I can't give that up. I love the Yankees and Mets. I love baseball, but in my heart, if I'm being honest, I'm always going to root for the Phillies first. When the Phillies are out, I'm going to be a Yankees guy, but as mayor, I'm going to be equal for both. I hated Adams's hat, but I loved the spirit of what he was trying to do.
Okay, hockey's easy, right? Because you can go with the Rangers because the Islanders are out of the mix. I guess you're going to have to make a choice between the Knicks and the Nets. You live in Brooklyn, but you're an older guy, so where do you fall down, Knicks or Nets?
Knicks, sorry. And that's not just because I followed the Knicks since I was in. I mean, literally, they were the first basketball team I ever followed in college. I went to college in New York, but I've gotten closer to the action because I represent MSG and have represented MSG as a private lawyer for years. So, I know their organization. I've met a number of the coaches, and I just think they're terrific people, and there's a great spirit on the team.
Absolutely. Maybe you can lower Knicks tickets prices. If you can do that, you'll definitely get elected mayor. Let me ask you this: your favorite slice in the city, a slice of pizza, for those who don't know.
Yeah, so I'd have to say it's my hometown, pizzeria. It's called Della Rocco's. It's on Hick Street. It's just a skip and a jump from my apartment, and I love their pizza. I love the people. So that's my favorite slice.
Where's your favorite place in New York City?
Favorite place in New York City? My God, probably the Brooklyn Bridge. I love walking over the bridge. I just find it like clears the mind. It's gorgeous. Both what you're walking on and what you're looking at. So I think that's my favorite.
That's true, as long as helicopters aren't coming by and Eric Adams isn't doing a press conference.
Well, you are anti-helicopter.
100%, 100%. Okay, let me ask you the last question, Jim, and thank you for sticking around for so long. Jim, I asked this of all the independent candidates who come on this show. I hope that this will bring your message and your story. We didn't even get to your personal story, which is really inspiring as well. But we are trying our best to expand the aperture and help people understand the breadth and also the quality of independent candidates that are out there. A lot of folks are going to be hearing from you for the first time in New York City and beyond. But if I'll give you, a minute or so, why should independents, especially in America, support you?
Independents should support me and every other independent candidate because we need a change. I mean, it's obvious to
every other one except Eric Adams, right?
Oh, well, he's not a real independent.
Okay,
You and I
gotcha.
both know that. He's an independent of opportunity. We need a break from the two-party system, and we need new leaders that are not beholden to either special interests or party policy programs that are being foisted on Americans from the left and the right, right? We need a time of centrism where people are focused on good government and strong leadership and less so on the blood sport that has become American politics. This is not a model that is going to have a great trajectory for our country. We've already seen how much we're dragging ourselves through the mud. And from my perspective, these are self-inflicted wounds. Everything that you're seeing right now on the far left and the far right, our enemies are celebrating. They love it. They hope that we continue to do it. They've been trying to encourage us to fight through manipulating our social media for years. So if we don't wake up and smell the coffee and realize that we need to check out from the blood sport and come together around compromises, right, our days are going to be darker than they need to be. We have a bright future ahead of us, and that future is down the middle path, the independent path, where we're trying to come up with policy compromises that work for everyone, and we stop all of the fringe issues and baiting each other on fringe issues that don't really matter at the end of the day to people being safe, being able to afford their bills, having a good paying job, having a community that's safe. Those are the things that government at all levels should be focused on.
Jim, I want to ask one more if I can.
Sure.
Maybe the one thing that could totally change this game is Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah.
He didn't endorse last time. He sat it out, and we got Adams, right? And de Blasio similarly. Have you sought out his endorsement?
I have, and I'm not going to go into details. I don't know if he's going to take a different position. I didn't speak to him directly, but my understanding is that he's not going to endorse this time. I hope as what I will say is one of the fathers, or at least the strong uncles of the independent party when it existed in New York. I really hope that he takes a stand, and I hope that he calls out a candidate based only on the candidate's qualities and ability to run the city the way that he did. And obviously, I think I'm that candidate, and I think I'm the only candidate in the race that can do that. So if he's listening, Mayor Bloomberg, the time's now.
I'll echo that. Hey, Mayor Bloomberg, you can't sit this one out, man.
We need you.
The city needs you. I think he was the best mayor we ever had. I think he helped really redefine a new generation of independents whose only reference point before that was Ross Perot or Jesse Ventura. And I think he can change the game. He is one person who could really make you a lot stronger and more viable as a candidate almost in an instant. So I would encourage him to get involved. Jim, I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
I'm going to save my endorsement until we see what the final field looks like. But I know I am rooting for you as an independent. I appreciate your courage and your patriotism and your service. Running is hard. It's a sacrifice. that you and your family are making. And I hope that this brings your message to a lot more people, not only in New York City, but around the country. And also for being a good role model, man. We need role models like you in the city for our kids that can contrast the debacle that we've got in City Hall right now. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your independence. I hope you'll join us again soon, and that the Knicks will win in 6, right? 5.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and your viewers, and thank you for everything that you're doing for the independent cause, because we need more strong speakers, and obviously your platform is enormous.
Thanks so much, Jim. We appreciate you, man. Go get him.
All right. Thanks.
All right, there you have it. Jim Walden running to be independent mayor of New York City. If you like what you heard, check out his website. It's linked in the show notes, along with the video to this if you're listening online, and lots of other background information. You can also find out how to join our Patreon community, and you can find us on all the social media tabs. Again, if you don't already, be sure to follow us on YouTube, where you can watch this entire episode on video. And if you like what you hear and you like what you see, spread the word and invite others to declare their independence. You can also give me a shout on our phone line. Here's the number. Drop me a message. Let me know what you think of this show. Let me know about any other independent candidates you want me to talk to. And let me know what you're excited about this spring. Especially in times like this, I urge you to look for the helpers. We talk about it every episode. The helpers are the people who are running in when others are running out. And sometimes they're people that just bring sunshine, bring some levity, bring some positivity to what's going on in the world. In this episode, I want to celebrate one man who spent decades bringing positivity, fun, and light all across America. The great Lee Corso. If you don't know Lee Corso, he's been an anchor on College Game Day on ESPN for decades. Every weekend, he's the fun, happy coach that brings the game to millions, and also has this climactic moment where he decides which team he thinks is going to win by donning the mascot's mask. Yeah, it's a small thing, but for those of us that love the game, even though it's not football season and football season seems far away, it's a kind of happiness and a positivity and an almost grandfatherly love that we look for every single Saturday on game day. So, to Lee Corso, thank you for bringing positive energy, for being a good role model, and in your own way, for being a helper. And I can't wait for football season. As we come close to finishing our walk, we're now all the way up on Pier 45. We started way back there. Pier 45 is also the Christopher Street Pier, which has tremendous historic and symbolic value, especially for the gay community, that for many, many decades was really centered back over here on Christopher Street. It's an epicenter for pride rallies. It's an epicenter for protests. It's an epicenter for enjoying the weather and reflecting on the beauty of life, love, and the city, which is especially important in spring, but really important at all times. And in my weekly effort to try to add some positivity and add some light to your life and to give you a tip or two from me, here they are, my Reichoff's recommendations. Recommendation number 1, spring is here. And this is a really basic one. Stop and smell the flowers. When was the last time you actually did that? It's something somebody taught me when I was little. My grandmother, my Nana, taught me to stop and smell the flowers. And I taught my kids. And now every time they walk by flowers, they stop and smell them. And no matter where you are in America, there's probably a place you can find some flowers. So I'm serious. Take a minute this week and stop and smell the flowers. Recommendation number 2. Springtime is special because you've got the NHL playoffs and you've got my favorite, the NBA playoffs. Even if you're not a basketball fan, check out some of the matchups happening this week and this month in the NBA. Of course, you've got my New York Knicks, who are in a dogfight against the upstart Detroit Pistons. I'm hoping for the best in that one. You've also got the Golden State Warriors and Jimmy Butler up against the young Houston Rockets. And maybe the premier matchup of the first round, you've got the LA Lakers with Luka Doncic against the Minnesota Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards. Again, it's spectacular. It's fun. It's energizing. So my recommendation, check out the NBA playoffs this week. My final recommendation for this episode. I'm not Huberman. This is not going to turn into a health and wellness podcast about ice baths. But I have picked up a few things along the way that make me happier and healthier that I'm going to pass on to you whenever I can. Sleep is really, really important. You hear it all the time, and it's true for me, especially as I get older. So, of course, everyone should get more sleep. But also, get better sleep. And here's something I started doing a little over a year ago that's made a huge difference. Wear an eye mask, put on some earplugs, and put on some socks. Yes, I read about this shit and I started trying it, and I can't get a lot more sleep than I used to, especially with this show and my other work and the 2 kids. But I find I'm getting better sleep because I got an eye mask on Amazon. I stick in a couple earplugs, and for some reason, when your feet are warm, you actually sleep better. Try it, because we're going to need better sleep, especially in the next couple of weeks and months as the crazy shit continues to come at us, and we're in for what will surely be a chaotic and hot summer. Spring is full of hope and it's full of sunshine, but it can also be really hard. And I know there are always folks listening to this show or watching this show who are going through hard times. I've been through them, and some of you may be going through them now. And I want to share with you any piece of inspiration or advice that I can to help you through it. And I thought about how to capture it. And I came across this clip from the great comedian Cat Williams, who maybe said it best.
And you find out from reading thousands of books that if you can list the fucked up things that have happened in your life and you can put that on a list and you somehow made it past all of this to be in a position where you can still go make some stuff happen, that's what you have in common with every hero of every story, of every autobiography, of every...
Wow.
Is how much happened to you that should have broke you, that did not break you, so that you were able to then
Fucking ride. Amen.
Amen.
Keep pushing, friends, because you can do it. You can get through this. And you should always remember that we're in this together. And stay vigilant, my friends, because eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And hope. Hope is the oxygen of democracy. Hope is the sunshine for the flowers of our future. And it's needed now more than ever. And no, you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all vigilant. And we're all in this together. Country over party. People over politics. Light over heat. Busting up the status quo and growing a new movement that can take us forward into brighter, better, happier days. I'm your host, Paul Reichhoff. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for watching. And until next time, down with Hamas, down with Putin's Slava Ukraine, and stay vigilant, America, and happy spring from New York City.
Powered by Righteous Media.